Hey everybody, welcome to the very first episode of Orange Nerd. In these videos, on this show of Orange Nerd, basically what we talk about is Star Wars, Marvel, anything in the nerd culture relating to streaming, TV, or film. And I brought my very, very good friend, Mr. VashSKy, on the program today to discuss a host of topics. Welcome aboard, sir.
Hello there. Good to be here. I am so just happy to be, talking about some other stuff and getting in with you. I am super excited.
Perfect. Tell everybody at home before we get started where they can find you on social media.
Well, best place to find me on social media is on Twitter. That's at V as in Victor, ASHSKY. Spelling's right there. On my camera right there. Okay. And then best place to find me really if you want to view the content is on your channel, actually, at Orange Grove 55 on YouTube. Doing a new show on your channel, which is Freshly Squeezed with VashSKy. And I think the first video came out really, really well. I'm really excited to produce more content. So going good.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And just so you know, I'm going to link up above his very first episode, which was absolutely phenomenal. So when you get the chance, definitely check it out. So let's dive right into these topics, man. There's a lot going on in this world right now. The first one is probably going to be a very hotly debated topic amongst the comment section. It's Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson wants to direct an episode of Mandalorian. He spoke to USA Today recently and said he would love to direct an episode. And what are your thoughts? Now, just to kind of give a little context, you and I both disagree on The Last Jedi. I actually really enjoyed it. You didn't like it. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on Rian Johnson wanting to direct an episode of Mando.
Okay, so I could go off and say all kinds of things about Rian Johnson, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because here's the thing: you could have, somebody with one view and somebody with another, and you can still come at it with a kind of a nuanced position, right? And I think I'm going to go that route. You see, the thing about The Last Jedi that people really had problems with was that not only was Rian Johnson tasked to direct, but he was also tasked to write, right? So as part of that, he made some changes to characters and made some changes to certain plot lines and so forth that people had real issues with. All right. And we don't have to debate those right now. But the thing about, directing an episode of The Mandalorian or any television show really is a director is brought in to kind of give their own kind of spice to the meat, but the meat and the potatoes are still there, and they're still going to taste great, right? And I think when you bring a director in, it really is about directing the cast, directing some camera shots, and then going on to the next project. What really sets the tone, the story, the kind of the script, everything, that's the showrunner's job. And when you think about a show for a season, the showrunner is really the director in a movie context, right? The showrunner, they run the show, and that's still going to be Jon Favreau with Dave Filoni's contribution. And I think what this was kind of a bridge moment, right? It was like, okay, how can we incorporate some of the new stuff as we make our way deeper into the show? And I think that's what that's all about.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I like The Last Jedi, I like Rian Johnson as a director for the most part. I mean, I really enjoyed Knives Out. I thought that was a really fun movie. But I think beyond my own personal opinion on him and Last Jedi or what have you, I think it would be a smart move both for Rian and for Lucasfilm and the franchise. And I'll tell you why. I think that really Rian Johnson's film, The Last Jedi, was very divisive. Either people loved it or they absolutely hated it. And that was really his only foray into the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
I think allowing him to direct a episode of Mandalorian is kind of a low risk situation where the overall effect isn't franchise ending. It's just one episode of a show. I think they should let him do it and then see where it goes. Like, and really, I mean, it's to his benefit. If the episode is, universally praised as, that was a good episode or a great episode. And for the most part, the fandom agrees that, hey, he directed a really solid episode. I think it would make, I'm not going to say it's going to completely mend fences. I'm not going to say that's going to wash away The Last Jedi, because at this point, I don't think there's anything that will, but I think that it would certainly make inroads in regards to, hey, you know what? He's tried 2 things now with Star Wars. One of them didn't work out for some of the fans, but this other thing worked out. And I think it would build just a little bit of trust back with the fans. If he can dip his toe into this and do it successfully. Now, that's a caveat. If he can do it successfully. If he goes into the episode and the episode is just as divisive as The Last Jedi, then he's back in the soup. He's like, it's done, But I think that it's an opportunity for him and for Lucasfilm to sort of mend fences and sort of become like, all right, look, he had a go at it. Maybe it didn't work out as planned, but this thing over here, this episode worked out really well. And if people like it, maybe he can direct another episode of Mando or an episode of the Boba Fett show and sort of slowly work its way back in. I think that's a smarter move than just having him have Lucasfilm say, hey, yeah, you know what? Despite The Last Jedi, here's a trilogy. I think that's a terrible decision. If you're going to have Rian back in the Star Wars universe, he's got to go this route, and he's got to start small and rebuild the trust with the fandom that didn't like The Last Jedi. Yeah.
And like I said, I mean, if you're going to do that, the best way to do it is with this format, I think. Yeah. I mean, some people, even the people who were very critical of Rian Johnson's storytelling ability and so forth, were very much complimentary of his directing style, right? They actually liked the performances that he brought out. They, liked his brand of humor to some extent. You had Rian Johnson, criticizers, as I'll put it mildly. But even them, even among them, they could still say, hey, there were some good qualities that he brought to the table and some good original ideas and performances and so forth that he brought to the Star Wars universe that were good things. And I think in setting him in this role, I think is good to mend those. It's a good way to mend those fences and to kind of bring the larger extended Star Wars family together.
Right. No, yeah, well said. Well said. And I think that too, it's no secret Kathleen Kennedy has had major issues, director issues, with, keeping directors, signing people on, and then they're leaving halfway through projects. It's honestly been a mess, over the past few years with that situation. I think that Disney Plus kind of offers, and I'm really curious to hear your opinion on this. I think Disney Plus offers an opportunity for Kathleen to sort of vet these directors through these smaller platforms. Let's say, for example, she sees a director that she believes might work well with Star Wars. Well, instead of just handing them a trilogy or handing them an entire film, she can vet them in a way by saying, hey, look, you know what? Try an episode of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, or let's have you direct an episode of Boba Fett, right? And kind of see how it goes from there. How is the working relationship? How do fans react to that particular episode? And then from there, it's a jumping point for hey, you know what? Let's give this person maybe a limited series, 4 or 5 episodes of something and see how that goes and work your way up. I think it's an opportunity for Kathleen. It's a vetting tool almost now, right? I mean, if she wants to utilize it that way.
I can definitely see that to some extent. I have different feelings on Kathleen Kennedy in general, but we'll sticking to this topic. I think, I think you make a really good point. It is kind of a way to kind of, vet different directors, their abilities to handle a big production, their ability to be maybe cohesive with certain storylines and certain characters that are featured in the worlds. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, the great opportunities that await the Star Wars universe in the kind of Disney Plus realm of things. I mean, you could take advantage of that from story, but you can also take advantage of that from production and cast. So I think it's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And you mentioned earlier in the segment, like, how the director sort of is just part of that process and how Filoni is sort of, guiding the whole process. I think going back to Ryan, I think that would also be a big benefit for him to sort of have Filoni, who is universally loved for the most part amongst the fandom, kind of advising him, hey, Ryan, maybe that wouldn't be such a good idea. Maybe we should do this or whatever. I think that would be to his benefit to have that guiding force along the way. You know what I'm saying? I think that,
and it's along the lines of Star Wars lore and history, right? Real history, where, some people, they kind of look at the prequel trilogy, for instance, that George Lucas did, and they look at that and they go, man, what was really missing there was somebody to tell George no. Gone too far, bring it back, that kind of thing.
Right.
And that's why a lot of people look at the sequel, the original trilogy as like the best trilogy, because there was that kind of coalescing of ideas, and he was bumping off ideas with his producer, different actors and so forth, and really between all those things made a really nice package. And I think when you look at the prospect of Rian Johnson being involved with Mandalorian, it could be a very good thing in that he brings things to the table, but also, he's working in this kind of world with these kind of boundaries that he has to kind of play by, and that could give him an opportunity to show his real strength. So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because I think Lucasfilm likes Rian Johnson. I think they liked what he did with Last Jedi. They want to use him again. I get that feeling, but they don't want the backlash. So this might be a good way to kind of ease him back in a little bit. And again, there's a huge caveat, I mean, if he does an episode of Mando and the episode is divisive and people hate it and love it, and it's the same deal as Last Jedi, I think he's done with Star Wars. I don't think he can survive in terms of a Star Wars creator. I think he's done with the franchise. I don't see how he can come back from that. But if he does really well, maybe, who knows?
Maybe. From what we understand, he's doing his Knives Out trilogy and stuff like that, and he's got kind of movies in the pipeline there. So this isn't even a for sure thing. Yeah. But it does present some opportunities, and maybe he can win some good graces with people who may have criticized him in The Last Jedi. It's very, very interesting, and who knows? We'll see.
We'll see. So that brings us to our next subject, which is very, very interesting. Kind of out in left field, kind of random a little bit. So Justin Lin, the director of Fast and Furious, came out and said that a Fast and Furious Jurassic World crossover is possible. He's open to that prospect, that possibility. Dre, what are your thoughts on Justin Lin's comments in regards to this crossover between Fast and Furious and Jurassic World?
So this is really interesting for me, because from kind of a wide range of perspectives here, it sounds outlandish, just the prospect on itself. It's like, really, two franchises together in this way? But honestly, it's not really that crazy. Yep. I don't know. Have you seen the 21-22 Jump Street series with Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum? I
saw the first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, because the second one is just making fun of the fact that they're doing it again. Okay. So it's very much in line, but it's more self-aware. It's like, hey, wait a minute, haven't we done this before? And that's kind of the joke, right? That they're kind of redoing what they did before. But in line with that, and if you share the screen here, I can show you what I'm talking about. So let's see. Yep. If you see on screen there, during the ending credits, because they are kind of making these jokes over and over again, they had this premise where it's like, oh, okay, where can we go next? Where can we take this idea? Now we were, these undercover narcotics officers that were, in high school, number 1, college, number 2, we could take this show on the road kind of thing. And so they have all of these concepts in all of these different machinations. So you see their military school, culinary school. It's very, very funny. And then
scuba class. I love that, man. That's
scuba
great.
class. And then you go to the next one. And it's hilarious. So dance school, all of that. But then you get to the last two. And the last two is very interesting because the middle one there on the right is looking kind of like something from the Three Amigos.
Right.
And then beyond that, it almost looks like a Top Gun parody.
Right.
And I think a producer had sort of a wacky idea, hey, that's a great idea. Why don't we take if we were to do a 23 Jump Street, obviously it would be played out, but you could bring new relevance to it if you mix it with another franchise.
Right.
And the other franchise that they thought of was this guy.
Oh, okay.
So the idea was, okay, well, if they're doing undercover drug operations, what if they go, undercover in this kind of Men in Black, not realizing what they really do, and then they get engrossed in the world and so forth. It was a great premise, a really kind of funny thing that would have brought new relevancy to both franchises. And I think they were associations close enough to pull this off. I think they spoke to the same audience demographics. I think they kind of have one's more self-aware, obviously, and one's more parody, whereas the other is kind of a comedy, but it takes itself a little bit more serious. And that was one of the reasons that the project was derailed, was they couldn't get over those features. But I think it would have really, really worked, and it sounded kind of like an incredible idea. But now this brings us over to this guy. And it doesn't quite mesh as well. Like, when I heard about this, I'm like, what? It's just like, it's bizarre.
It is.
And it speaks to, Fast and Furious. I got to put this out there. It's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine, really. Right. I kind of like, I am actually a fan of the first one and the fifth one, a genuine fan, but the rest of them I kind of understood what, for what they were, right? They were kind of dumb action movies, and they're kind of doing insane stuff, but it's just kind of, even for me, who's just like, I'm not like in love with this franchise, but right. I do watch them. They've gone really downhill, especially with the last couple of installments. And it looks like number 9 that's coming out, which is insane, is going to be of that ilk.
Well, number 9, from what I understand, they're going to outer space, right? Am I right on that?
Yes. There is a scene. Where Tej and what's his name, Tyrese, whatever his character is, they go into like space. They go into like the upper atmosphere, but I don't know, man. So it's already whacked out. It's already played out. How do you bring more relevance to it? Well, you inject another franchise into it, and that's what brings us to Jurassic World.
Well, here's the thing. Mm-hmm. When I first heard it, I'm like, this is bullshit. This is not going to happen ever, because I think it would be hard to get Steven Spielberg on board with this. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, but aside from that, I started to think about it a little more, and I'm like, well, like Universal, because I believe both of these are Universal. Mm-hmm. Universal has sort of always been known for this kind of, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way at all. They're kind of obnoxious. They're bombastic. It's explosions and dinosaurs, and it's in your face. Mm-hmm. I could see this being on brand for Universal. I can see this. It's so out there and so bombastic and so crazy. It might actually work in a weird way for this particular brand, this studio. I don't know. I mean, and I think, look, I don't really like, I'm kind of with you. I think the Fast and Furious franchise has completely gone downhill. I haven't really, to be honest with you, haven't seen one since like, I think Tokyo Drift or something, and now they're up to 9, and that was like number 3, I think.
Yeah.
I don't even really watch the movies, but honestly, if they made this movie, I think the curiosity factor alone would get me in the theater. I really do.
You just like the dinosaurs. Yeah. I mean, look, how do you look? Are we gonna really go Fast and Furious 10 and 11 without changing it up at least somewhat? I mean, you're gonna have to do stuff like this. I would suppose if you're gonna get more, traction out of that franchise. This is what is weird to me because, yes, Fast and Furious is so whacked out and crazy. This just might work for that franchise. And I guess you could say the same for Jurassic World, but I guess my thing is aren't these two separate demographics, separate audiences?
That's true.
Like it's kind of like, Fast and the Furious is kind of, very youth oriented and kind of the kind of cool guys movie almost, and Jurassic World's very much kind of nerd culture. So it's a little bit oil and water that way for me. From what I understand, these two movies, though, they do great in China, so they've got the Asian market all locked down from what I understand. If you go in the article, it sounds like to me that this was some journalists will do this where they'll ask a question on a particular topic on a very specific issue. That person, the interviewee, will comment on that issue. And when they write the headline tomorrow, it's like, oh, so-and-so makes, this comment about this. And it's like, it's almost like they're spouting off stuff when in reality, they're just responding to a question.
Right.
That kind of thing. This feels like that.
Right, exactly. For example, if a reporter were to ask a director, and I'm not saying Justin Lin in particular, I'm just kind of giving you a generality. If a reporter were to ask, a director a question like, would you be willing, if approached, to do this crossover? Are you open to it? And of course the director is going to be like, yeah, I'd be open to it, because they don't want to burn bridges in their own industry and just be like, oh, no way, I would never work with that friend. You know what I'm saying? Right. So I kind of get that feeling like, to your point, that's kind of what's happening here. Like, he's down for it. He's open to it. But like, is he really, like, I think it's kind of, you know what I'm saying? The question, and like, he doesn't want to like say, well, no, absolutely not. Cause it's kind of insulting then to the team that worked on the Jurassic Park movies. Right.
Right.
So will it happen? Probably not. I can't see Steven Spielberg signing on for this. But
listen, it's just, I can't see it. Even though Universal, I believe, has the exclusive rights. I know Steven Spielberg has some creative control, but from what I understand, Universal has the rights locked down. They could do it if people wanted to, but I mean, with the 22 Jump Street and Men in Black thing, those were the same studios for there, and that didn't work out. So we'll see, but it's an interesting idea. Very interesting for sure.
Definitely. So we're gonna pivot now. We're gonna do some Marvel. Yeah. It was announced, big news, actually, very big news. A deal was made between Disney and Sony in regards to the streaming and television rights for Spider-Man, for the Spider-Man franchise. So for those of you at home that aren't aware, yes, Disney owns the character of Spider-Man, but they don't have the film rights to Spider-Man based on a previous deal that Marvel made prior to Disney buying Marvel. So they worked out a deal with them in regards to TV and streaming. VashSKy, what are your thoughts on this deal? This is pretty big.
This is crazy, man. This is a new realm here. I mean, literally, Sony, they double dipped. They played both sides. And in a way, they didn't even have to have their own streaming process to do it. They just used what was available. And Netflix has been so aggressive with getting some of these deals, and the whole idea with the whole streaming thing is you're going to start out with a whole bunch of streaming networks, but there's really, come 10, 20 years time, there's only going to be a couple, right? And so Netflix has been very aggressive to be one of those that are left. And so is Disney Plus. But in Netflix's case, they went out, grabbed the contract from Sony, worked on it with them, But smartly, Sony understood that, you know, Disney just loves to consolidate. They just love it to be under one banner, under one mouse house, and they took advantage of that. And negotiations started up between the two studios, and it looks like Netflix will get the initial window for release, and then it'll turn over to Disney Plus so that Marvel MCU fans can go to one place to watch all their Marvel MCU content when that time's available. So I think it's really, really interesting, man. I mean, you got to give it up to Sony. They played the market and they got it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I agree with you. I think this was the smart move for Sony. It's not really one size fits all for every studio. And what I mean by that is that I think there's some studios that they need to get into the streaming service game. Disney, Warner Brothers. I think these studios are so big with so many franchises in-house. I think that it was essential for them to jump into that streaming game. Sony, though, not so much. Like, even when you look at the press release in regards to this whole deal, Sony touts Spider-Man, which is a huge franchise. But then the other two they mentioned is Jumanji and Hotel Transylvania. It's like, okay, those are the best you got. It's certainly not Disney. It's certainly not Warner Media. So I think it's in Sony's best interest to really, instead of diving into the platform game, the streaming platform game, where they would surely lose, because how many streaming services are people really going to have after Netflix and Hulu and HBO Max? And there's just too many, and Sony would be very low on that list. So it's smarter, really business-wise, for Sony to say, hey, you know what? We're not going to pour a bunch of money into a streaming service. We're not going to do Sony Plus. Or Sony Max or whatever. We're going to license out these characters and make our money that way. And it's a brilliant move for Sony, because I think that's really the shoe that fits them. I think that's the best way for that studio,
I would definitely agree. I mean, I would 100% agree. And expect a lot more of these kind of licensing deals going forward, folks. I mean, not everybody is going to be left at the end of the day. They're going to have some studios that have streaming services, very few, and there's others that are just going to be streaming and so forth. And that studio's repository of content is going to need to be distributed somewhere, and it's probably going to be one of these that are left: Disney Plus, Netflix, and etc. So it's like, hey, why do this song and dance of setting up a streaming service, trying to sell it, and so forth? Just go license it direct. Like you said, Sony's got a very limited, set of franchises. That's something that they've been trying to overcome and just haven't. And you could point to Amy Pascal and some other things, but that's a whole other issue. But that's why they were looking at 22 Jump Street and Men in Black, because they just don't have a lot.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now, this is one of the things, obviously, when Disney bought Marvel, I think it was like in 2009, it was the right move. Obviously, billions of dollars later, Bob Iger definitely made the right move. But I think one negative factor that came out of that purchase, and it wasn't really Marvel's fault at all, or Disney's really, but was the fact that Marvel, because they weren't owned by a mega studio prior to Disney, they sold themselves out to all these different, we've seen it in the theme park world. Marvel sold the theme park rights to Universal. They sold the X-Men and the Fantastic Four rights to Fox. They sold the Spider-Man rights to Sony. So Marvel really Hulk. Out. Yeah. So now Disney is sort of, the negative thing with them buying Marvel was that now Disney's left trying to untie this giant knot and trying to get all this stuff back. Now they got all the Fox stuff back. I don't know if they're ever going to get the Sony stuff. I really don't know. Because like you said, we talked about, Spider-Man's really all they got. And I don't think Sony's going to be willing to really give that up anytime soon. No.
Historically, I mean, they held on to it for dear life. And the way that contract's set up is really interesting. So in the Sony contract for Spider-Man, it says if you don't produce a content within a set number of years, I can't remember if it's 3, 5, or 10. I can't remember the exact number on that. But if they don't produce a movie, or at least have one in production, by that set time, the rights automatically revert back to Marvel, which in this case would be Disney. So unfortunately, that really incentivizes mediocre films to come out just to keep the rights. And that does long-term damage to the character. It's, sustainability and market and so forth. So for Disney, it was really important to get that character integrated into the MCU as quickly as possible. It just even from that end, because Spider-Man historically has been one of the biggest sellers of Marvel merchandise of all time. I mean, it's Spider-Man, at least back in the day, it was Spider-Man, Hulk, and everybody else. So it was really important to kind of incorporate that and to stop that kind of process of attrition from actually continuing and happening. And it was a landmark deal when they did the deal originally to get him into Captain America: Civil War, which is interesting because I guess they had footage just in case that deal didn't happen, that it could be a seamless kind of thing, right? And if you look at the shots and everything with Spider-Man, the clips and so forth, he is kind of inserted, but it's you gotta have flexibility, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's been really fascinating. Tom Holland, from what I understand, is going to be in Web Slingers. So we're getting the Spider-Man that we know, which at the time we didn't even know if that was going to be the case, because of how this deal is structured. It's very, very complex. So I think, hey, Disney's been aggressive to try to get the character back under the banner. Sony has been willing to work with that. I guess they have their own Venomverse that's going on right now, and they have what is it? The new one coming out is Let There Be Carnage.
Oh, cool! Wow,
Venom 2, and that sounds really cool and interesting. But I mean, it's a different time for sure.
It is. Did you ever get a chance to watch the animated Enter the Spider-Verse movie?
No, I did not. I heard such great things though. Phil Lord and Chris Miller, that they were, they were involved in that, correct?
Yes, they were. Yeah, and it was a great movie. Great movie. Actually, that movie is exactly what I wanted Big Hero 6 to be. It was phenomenal. If you ever get a chance, check it out. I think you'll like it. It was really great.
Like I said, I have a whole stack of movies, but that is one of them, because I actually heard it was really, really good. Going back just real fast, Michael Eisner, he could never see the Marvel brand being incorporated into Disney because, like you said before, Marvel was going through such financial turmoil that they had to parse themselves out like that to even survive.
Right.
And Michael Eisner did have a couple of, of opportunities at a bite at that apple and just never bit because he just couldn't see it. He couldn't see how Marvel integrated into the Disney company in a way that made sense to him. And hey, give it up to Bob Iger. He had the vision. He said, hey, you know what? We can make this work. And man, oh man, it's paid off in spades.
Yeah. And I've heard that same argument amongst the community too, the fan community, that well, Marvel doesn't really fit with Disney. And I got to disagree with Eisner and a lot of the fans that say that these superheroes don't really mesh with Disney and the branding, because what is Disney? I mean, Disney is all about, princesses and cowboys and what have you. And superheroes are kind of a modern iteration of those things in a way. I think it fits perfectly. I really do. I think it's kind of like, in the boomers, as they call them, had cowboys and John Wayne and Davy Crockett. But this generation has Iron Man and Captain America and Falcon and Bucky. And it's the natural evolution of those heroes in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's so Disney.
It's the modern mythology, which Disney has, they've engaged in for almost close to 100 years now. It's the modern folklore, the modern kind of epic storytelling. And yeah, I could definitely, it's crazy because there was a world where Pixar wasn't part of Disney. And It's just like, man, I can't even think of Pixar being part of Disney. Well, now it is, there was a time when, Star Wars was, not part of Disney, and
Now it is.
now it is, but those seeds were set in 1987 when Star Tours was going in and stuff like that, and you kind of see that. I know there's a big disconnect with Marvel in terms of Star Wars, in terms of Disney, but hey, it's I think it's purely Disney. I think it's just a great canvas for the mouse to work and bring these stories to life, and they've done it extremely well. If you were worried that Disney would taint Marvel, Marvel taint Disney, that really hasn't happened, and but it's been mutually beneficial, and it's especially beneficial for us fans. So I think it's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I concur. And another thing too is like this whole thing about like, yeah, I've heard the argument too. Like, I can't picture this being Disney or that being Disney. But Walt was all about expanding what it means to be Disney from the beginning. It wasn't, Disney wasn't about animated films until it was, right?
Yeah.
Disney wasn't about live action until it was.
Mm-hmm.
Disney wasn't about theme parks until it was.
Yeah.
And it is constantly, even under Walt, what it meant to be quote unquote Disney was constantly expanding. And I think Bob Iger, to his credit, he kind of took that philosophy and did the same thing. He expanded the barriers as to what it means to be Disney. And now superheroes are synonymous with Disney, and now you can't imagine anyone else having Marvel. You can't imagine anyone else having Star Wars. So I think to Iger's credit, that's one thing he's done in the past, 15 years or so that I think was pretty brilliant.
I think so too. And listen, folks, as the great Paul Frees would say,
there's no turning back now.
They're part of the Disney family, guys. You're gonna have to let them in.
You gotta let him in. Yeah, it's true. Oh man, I love Paul Frees. His voice is
great.
Incredible.
Oh man, good stuff. He's great.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So I wanted to pivot now. We're gonna stay on the topic of Marvel. This is the last, the last topic, but did you see that Shang Chi trailer, Dre? I mean, how awesome was that?
Oh my gosh. It's really something like that. Okay, so as far as like Marvel or MCU iconography, there wasn't a whole lot of that. If for Marvel, for true Marvel MCU fans, there was enough to chew on for sure. But what made this kind of separate itself from the pack was just how different it actually was. I mean, I believe his name is Bill Pope, the cinematographer on this project. He's done prior work in The Matrix. What is it? He's done work Spiderman 2 and 3. This is his first MCU film. And he brings a style that's really, really interesting just from a cinematography level. I mean, you're just seeing these pans, these twists, these turns. You're seeing this kind of color correction that we've never really associated with the MCU before. I think they're going out with this one and really saying like, hey, look, we know we have a certain, we have a notion out there that, all these movies kind of feel the same. They look the same, all that kind of stuff. We really want to do something that's really unique and original. And I think that's the tone that Marvel's been setting ever since Endgame. And I think it's really worked out great for them. And this is no exception.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really actually took notice to the music in the trailer. I don't know if that's the music that's going to be in the movie, but at least in the trailer, I really like the approach of it kind of being this very Asian inspired music, but kind of woven into this hip hop beat. It reminded me, I was, as a kid growing up, I was a huge fan of the Wu-Tang Clan. I loved Wu-Tang, and it kind of reminded me of Wu-Tang, where it was Asian inspired martial arts, but then it had that hip hop element to it.
Right.
That's what this music reminded me of. And I thought, you know what? That's exactly the kind of tone they should be going with here. I think it just hit the nail on the head. I really enjoyed the music in this trailer.
It's definitely taking inspiration from like a wuxia film, and like you said, kind of an urban hip hop influence, and kind of merging those together. Like you said, like Wu-Tang would. It definitely almost Crouching Tiger in that way, and
Yeah.
it really is a mixture of styles, but they blend extremely well in this trailer. I was really impressed.
Yeah, definitely. And like you mentioned, like that Marvel's trying to kind of, since Endgame, do different stuff. And I agree. You're definitely seeing that. They're trying to get out of just that like formulaic kind of superhero bubble, and they're trying to do different things in this whole new direction. I mean, with WandaVision, with the sitcom element and all of that, and now we're into Shang Chi and all that. It's just they're really trying to branch out, and I respect that, and I like that. I think it keeps the MCU fresh. You don't want to fall back on just being like standard stuff forever. You want to kind of branch out. You
got to be unique. Now we're going into so many MCU films. I've heard a lot of people say, they kind of feel the same and stuff like that. And I think they understand that. They understand that's like there's a certain level of expectation that comes with the MCU, but if we stick to that style too closely, we can start to get irrelevant really fast. And I think I think what they've been doing the last couple of entries, whether it be WandaVision, even going back to Black Panther and Doctor Strange and stuff like that, they're kind of unique films. They're kind of films that kind of stand alone, that you kind of remember, that have their own unique identities and personalities, and I think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really, really looking forward to this movie. Now, have you heard? I missed it. I'm not really sure. Have you heard that the approach they're going to have with this film? Is it going to be in theaters, or is it going to be like a dual release of theaters and Disney Plus, or have you heard anything in regards to that?
So a lot of industry experts are saying that it should be a release straight to theaters. I mean, they wanted to do it with Black Widow, but it's just the timing wasn't correct. A lot of the decisions with the Disney company right now, when it comes to theme park projects, studio releases, and so forth, is really predicated on vaccine and vaccine distribution. And while distribution has been going well, they just couldn't make the Black Widow date. They didn't feel comfortable with it just being in theaters. However, these theaters are struggling, so they need content badly, exclusive content, but that should change. Shang-Chi has been scheduled for September, and from what I understand, a lot of the analysts are saying that should be a theater exclusive.
Cool. Mm-hmm. I think that's great. I think that's great for the movie, and I think that's great for theaters, which desperately need it. I just heard, I think it was like last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, that Pacific Theaters is closing their door, all of their theaters, and here in California, they're a big player. I mean, there's a theater down the street from me, that's a Pacific Theater that's massive. I grew up in that theater. It's really sad to see.
No, it really is. I was worried about my local theater chain here, Harkins Theaters, about it being affected. And interestingly, they're kind of refurbishing their theaters in one of the local malls here, which is quite phenomenal to see. But others not so lucky, unfortunately. And that's really, the reason why we have billion-dollar films and these huge box office grosses is from how many screens are available. Every day that goes by without movies being released, at least given some type of window in the theaters, that's less and less screens that will be available when these things do come back. So it is very concerning from that end. But to talk about the trailer itself, though, a lot of cool references to. I guess we're gonna have what is it? The Mandarin, the actual true Mandarin, and not just the kind of tease that we got, and kind of got the subverted our expectations, you could say, to quote Rian Johnson there. From Iron Man 3, we're actually gonna get the real Mandarin. We're actually going to have these things. We're going to have maybe flashback scenes that go back in time a little bit to ancient China and what was going on there with this kind of Order of the Ten Rings is what we're going to be seeing here. And it looks like they changed the 10 rings from rings that were previously on the finger to these kind of armbands that you're seeing, which is consistent with kind of Asian kind of kung fu practices where fighters will put rings on to actually strengthen their muscles in their arms, and while they're kind of doing their training. So it's kind of interesting in that way. Just some kind of changes that kind of bring it closer to its heritage and roots. There's what is it? I'm trying to think back to all the stuff that I saw in the trailer. There's so much there.
So much.
But just kind of the wire work, the wuxia style, like we were saying, I think it's going to be really, really cool.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting, and it was kind of interesting how he, I think it was his father that told him, "I'm going to give you 10 years to kind of live your life, kind of like, I guess, party it up or do whatever you want. But after that 10 years, it's back in business, It's
so
kind of interesting.
Oh yeah. So if people don't understand the story here of Shang Chi, so the kind of premise is that the lead character was trained as an assassin by his father, which we expect to be the Mandarin, and as an assassin, he's kind of been this tool and this pawn for all this time, and has been kind of trained to be that person, kind of his right-hand man kind of thing. And, it's interesting. Some people say that maybe he was let go. Other people say that he's escaped his clutches of his father, and maybe he believed that he was completely out of that world, but his father's been keeping an eye on him this whole time, which is kind of interesting. Kind of sets up an interesting dynamic for the film. It's some pretty fascinating stuff in there.
It is. I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it's really going to be. From what I've seen, I'm impressed, and I can't wait for it. I really can't.
Yeah, there might be callbacks to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and some tiebacks to other MCU films. For example, of the Doctor Strange, post-credits scene? Do you remember that?
Refresh my memory. It's been a while since I've seen that one.
So one of the characters in that film, they have it out with the Hong Kong Sanctum and everything like that, and Doctor Strange uses the time gem for the first time to kind of switch back time, and one of the sidekick ancillary characters in that kind of gets he's just like, whoa, dude, like that's not how you should be doing that. Like that's an extremely dangerous thing that you did that right there. And Dr. Strange is like, hey, look, we're all here, right? I mean, the world didn't, collapse in on itself. This is what we had to do. And he kind of goes off on his own and starts to kind of steal magic and gets rid of sorcerers along the way to do that. Then the post-credits scene shows one of the other characters being affected by him, and he kind of turns evil at that point. Well, that character might be brought back in Shang-Chi, and
wow,
you're even though we didn't see primo MCU iconography, the MCU he's definitely part of it, and he will be incorporated in it.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, and I've heard and I'm not a big comic. I don't read the comics, full disclosure, but I heard that I guess at some point in the comics, at least, that Shang-Chi was part of the Avengers or some iteration of the Avengers in the comics.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be incorporated into this kind of new Avengers that we're going to be seeing post Iron Man and Game and so forth. No question that he'll find his role in there and how that kind of connects with everybody else. I mean, the setting is San Francisco, or at least where he lives in the film. In the start of it, and that's not that far from Ant-Man. So there you go.
Yeah, and it's also kind of perfect for DCA, California Adventure, if they want to put it in there.
There you go. There you go. One of the final action sequences takes place right in front of Ghirardelli Square, right?
Oh,
so there you go. You're already in there. So there you go. We'll see. I mean, I can see that though. I mean, they have the Lunar New Year festival every single year, and that's extremely successful. I'm sure you could have some kind of integration with that.
Yeah, absolutely. VashSKy, thank you, brother, for coming on. I really, really do appreciate it. Before we go, if you could let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
Best place to interact with me on social media is on Twitter. That's at VashSKy. That's at V as in Victor, AS8. VashSKy. See, I screwed up on the video too, but it's right down,
It's right there, though.
down there. It's right
Yeah.
down there. There you go. And then I'm doing exclusive content for Orange Crow 55 on this YouTube channel that you're watching this from. So I do a show, Freshly Squeezed, your source for, fresh and juicy content, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So that's where I am.
Perfect. Well, thank you, brother. And thank you all for watching. And if you can comment below with any comments or questions in regards to everything we talked about, Rian Johnson wanting to direct an episode of Mando, the Spiderman, streaming and TV deal, Shang Chi, the ridiculous Jurassic World Fast and Furious crossovers, everything and anything. And also make sure you check out this guy's new show, Freshly Squeezed. There will be a link at the end of the video, and there was a link at the beginning of the video. So make sure you check him out. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.